Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where lost moms candidly talk about their experiences with stillbirth that have left them at a total loss for words. It is through our stories that we hope to give you support, motivation, friendship, and maybe a laugh or two. But most importantly, we hope to give you light in the darkest moments of your life. I'm Catherine, a lost mom to my beautiful son Brody, who was born still at 36 weeks on January 18th, 2022. While trying to survive the sadness and find answers as to why he died, I found this community of incredible women willing to share their journey, experiences, and sometimes margaritas so that I didn't feel alone. They helped me survive, and I hope we can do the same for you. So grab some wine and some tissues as we navigate this awful world of stillbirths that has left us all at a total loss.
Do I need to introduce myself?
You can if you'd like to. I usually put it in the description, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Bliss.
This is Bliss Stone. All right. Well, in 2013, February 12th, we lost our third child, Harrison, when he was stillborn. And he was, it was a normal pregnancy, and he was breech. Mm-hmm. And I went in for a doctor's appointment one day, and he turned right before that doctor's appointment, and we were really excited because I was almost 2 weeks away from my due date. And the doctor's appointment went fine, and that was on a Friday. And then over the weekend, he was slowing down. I noticed he wasn't moving a whole lot, but it really wasn't that abnormal. He had not moved a whole lot while he was in utero. He was a really chill, calm baby, and I'd had 2 babies before, and I knew it was common that babies slow down. Mm-hmm. And we were busy. We were running around. I just wasn't paying a ton of attention. And then it was, I don't know, I went to bed one night, and while I was sleeping, I was really uncomfortable. And it was almost like, I was like, this baby's not moving. And I knew that in my sleep. Mm. And I had this really strange dream. And in that dream, my grandmother kind of floated down she was floating down from like an angel. But she was my grandmother like she was before I knew her as my grandmother, like the pictures that I'd seen, like from the 40s. And she had this huge old-fashioned camera. And the camera, and in my dream, it was stressing me. I was like, no, don't take the picture. And in my dream, I was relating it to my daughter, who was 5.5 at the time. Mm-hmm. And it's like, don't take her picture. And then the camera went off, and there was a flash of light. And at that same moment, my daughter came into our bedroom. And this was maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. And she came in, and I kind of calmed down, but I was like, this baby's not moving. And I got up, in the morning, and I was in denial. I was like, no, it's going to be fine. I'm going to drink some coffee. He's going to be kicking. And long story short, I went to the doctor, and there was no heartbeat. But the reason I tell that story is because I really think that was the moment that he died. That you hear about a flash of light, people seeing a flash of light, mm-hmm. or people who have died and come back in that flash of light. So I don't know, intuition, God, angels, like.
I have chills. You're not the only one who has said things like this, that there's a moment of intuition, like you said, where just something.
Yeah. Wow. And I just knew.
Had you had any other previous intuitive moments or dreams?
Yeah, when you look back, I'd had some bad dreams during that pregnancy. I just had some, I remember we were in the mountains one time, and there was a lightning storm, and we were in a downstairs bedroom, and it was like the lightning flashed, and I saw a figure outside the window. And it was just sort of maybe it was related, maybe it wasn't. But when I look back on it, I relate it. But otherwise, not really. And a lot of it was I felt like I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I was busy. I had a lot going on. I had 2 little children, and doctor's appointments went pretty well, and didn't think much about it.
As your third pregnancy, at any point did you think that stillbirth was a potential outcome?
Nope. No.
Not one time. No one said anything about the potential risks and harm and things that could happen.
I guess you inherently know that there are risks, but I had never met anyone who had experienced that. Now, I did have a friend who had lost a baby at 20 weeks. So I guess I did know that it was possible, but I hadn't understood it really. And I hadn't known anyone who had lost a baby full term or hadn't met anyone or hadn't talked about it. As you know, like once it happens to you, you start to realize how common it is, or that you're not alone in it.
So the cause, did they have any associations with Harrison's death?
His when he turned non-breech, he had an extra long umbilical cord and it tied in a knot.
Did you know he had an extra long umbilical cord before then?
It wasn't. I don't know that it was extra. I mean, I don't know that it was noticeable. But it had somehow a knot tied in it.
So this sounds like this was not a preventable situation. Did the doctor say anything after?
No, I was at Piedmont, and I got to say the doctors and nurses were phenomenal.
Good. I don't hear that often.
The nurses especially. I went to that doctor's appointment alone. I was so convinced I was wrong. And I sent my husband to work.
Oh, wow.
And I was there. I actually wasn't alone. I'm sorry. My 2.5-year-old was with me. And when my nurse at the doctor's office, who's been my nurse forever, for my OBGYN, couldn't find a heartbeat, she went to get the doctor, and another woman from the office came and got my 2.5-year-old and was like, you want to come play with me? And they then sent me down to the ultrasound room to double check. And at that point, the technician just put her hand on my stomach and just said, I'm so sorry.
To this day, this is the hardest part of the entire thing, that doesn't matter how many years you've been removed from it, it is still the most horrific moment in all of our lives, that those words. You go into a state of shock after. Do you even remember what happened next?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
Yeah.
I called my husband, and he didn't answer. And I called him right back, and he picked up immediately. And he was like, what's wrong? And I just cried. I was like, there's no heartbeat. And he said, I'll be right there. And he hung up. And, sorry. I called my mom.
Yeah.
And she came straight away to get my 2.5-year-old and to be with me. And then I called one of my best friends. And then at that point, she took care of contacting other people.
She did.
And we walked straight to the delivery wing. And I remember what I was wearing. I remember the jewelry I had on. I remember everything. And when we were walking down the hall to the maternity, or to the delivery wing, the nurses were waiting. And they walked up and hugged me. They just kept hugging me, and they said, "It's okay. We're going to take care of you." And they put me in a room, and they started the induction process, Pitocin, to start.
So you went straight from the doctor to the hospital?
Yeah. Well, my doctor's office was at the hospital.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So went straight there. And they may have started the Pitocin that night, but I stayed there. And because it was the next day, that was actually February 11th. February 12th is when I actually delivered him.
And do you somehow, some of us tend to, so Brody, I was told Brody was gone on the 17th, but he wasn't born until the 18th. So it's like this weird juxtapose, like worst day of your life / semi great best day to see this baby. Have you been able to kind of do something like that? Or is it still kind of mushed up into the worst thing in the world?
Well, it's been almost 10 years. And you see that, and I don't know if I'm answering exactly your question exactly as you're asking it, but you see with loss comes a ton of light. And I often wonder how things would be different if I had not experienced that, right? If we had not gone through that, what would our lives look like?
Wow.
You know, by the time we got home from the hospital, we had 3 months of meals lined up by our friends, like not without a day passing. People had signed up.
Dang, 3 months? I got 2 weeks, y'all. Where were you at?
There was a
3
cooler.
months?
There was a cooler on our front porch. Like it was set up. It was running.
Amazing friends.
And you know, been in Atlanta for a while, but it was fascinating, and the community that surrounded us was really inspiring and loving, and you know, people we knew well and people we didn't know that well who reached out. And, you know, even if it was just to say I'm thinking of you, right? Like nothing major. How
open were you about Harrison's death right in the beginning? Or did it take some time before you kind of...
I was pretty open about it, but I didn't talk to a whole lot of people at first.
Okay.
I needed some time. My whole family came. My mom was there. My dad and his wife came. My brother came. My in-laws came. So I had a lot of people around. You know, our priest from our church came to the hospital and did last rites and baptized him, and we were able to sort of have these really beautiful moments that were tied up in a terrible time.
Were you seeing them as beautiful at the time, or did it take more time to look back and say, wow, that was really beautiful?
Both. I mean,
Okay.
I think at the time, you know, I remember when I finally let them take him away, right? We had bathed him. We put him in his baptism gown. I was holding him. And I was okay. I don't know. Somehow I was like, okay, this is a peaceful moment. I can let them take him away. And I don't know where that came from. I really don't. Like, I don't know if it was just, I didn't have a choice. I had to, you know, can't hold on to that precious shell of his body anymore.
Yeah.
But he was perfect, you know. He was beautiful. He was biased, but he was one of the most beautiful newborns I'd ever seen.
Do you remember his birth stats?
He was 5 pounds, 5 ounces. So he was kind of on the small side because all my other children, well, my older two were both 7+ pounds, and then I have a fourth who was born after, and he was 5 pounds, 5 ounces also, but he was 6 weeks early.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, but yeah, 5 pounds, 5 ounces, 19 inches. So he was a small baby.
Mm-hmm. And he was around 38 weeks, you said?
38 weeks, yeah.
And did you just, everyone said the cord that was what happened. There was no
cord.
additional looking into it? Okay.
Nope.
So you had a clear-cut answer right there.
The second he was born.
Wow.
My doctor was like, there's a knot. And it was tight. It was like a very tight knot in his cord.
That's incredible how that happens.
Yeah.
And it's not more discussed, because I think it does happen. And some babies actually do survive that. So it's really hard to hear that yours doesn't, you know?
It was so tight. Like I remember seeing it, and there was just no way. You know, it was very tight.
So you already had 2 children. Do you feel that you had to stay completely present almost immediately for them? Or did you have an opportunity to kind of check out and grieve and mourn for a small period of time?
I did.
Yeah.
My in-laws were there for about a week, I think. My mom lives in town, so she was there a bunch, but my in-laws came and stayed with us. And my mother-in-law was actually really good at noticing when I was getting too stressed and kind of distracting somebody. My mom was really good at helping me feel like, say it's okay to be sad. You know, you don't have to be strong.
Had anyone around you ever known anybody, and then maybe they just never talked about it?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Well, almost 10 years ago, it probably was even less talked about than it is now. I mean, I think only recently have people really been coming out and saying that they've experienced this.
Yeah. There's probably truth in that.
Did you feel at the time a level of shame or anything, or embarrassment that maybe you didn't want anyone to know, or how did you feel?
Guilty. I felt a lot of guilt. A lot of guilt that I should have known. I should have noticed. I should have gone to the doctor sooner. I should have, tons of guilt. There was a ton of guilt associated with the fact that when I actually, prior to, when I found out I was pregnant with him, I didn't want to be pregnant. I didn't want to have another baby.
So you felt like you might have manifested it.
Yes. Lots of guilt, that I wasn't present enough, that I wasn't focusing on the right things. But ultimately, I had to forgive myself for that.
How long did that take you? Do you remember?
Well, it's a lifelong process, you know.
Lifelong. Yeah.
You get better at it, but some days are better than others.
Did you seek out support groups or counseling, or did you talk to other lost moms right after?
I talked to my friend who had lost the baby at 20 weeks came over, and we talked. But I really didn't. I talked to more lost moms afterwards when other people had friends or had this happen to them.
Oh, so women after you came to you to talk about it?
And I would talk to them.
Yeah.
But I didn't, I never sought professional help, which I probably should have, but I didn't.
No, I mean, you sound like you had a really good support system. Did you have anybody not be good? Did any relationships end?
No.
That's great.
I think people, but I also think it's an uncomfortable situation, and I just, for some reason, had a lot of grace for understanding that people didn't know what to say. And I just sort of took the approach that saying anything, or even just giving you a hug or sending a note, is their way of expressing their sympathy and their love and their condolences. And I think in the past, growing up and not knowing how to address death myself for other people until I'd gone through something, it's not easy for people if they haven't, especially if they haven't been through anything traumatic. So I didn't really lose any relationships. Maybe a few changed a little bit.
It's a good way of putting it. They change. It's, and some of us who don't have any other living children, when you become a mother, your life shifts. And when you have a baby, your life shifts and relationships change. And a lot of people in this community I think we expect way too much of people. I think we are quick to get offended when someone doesn't say or do the right thing, or we are, quick to put people in their place when they have a certain feeling towards what we're going through. And all we need to take a step back. And I was told, don't do anything detrimental in this season of your life that would ruin anything in the future for relationships. Because when you're in grief, your grief brain, your trauma brain, all of that, you really want to kind of just direct your pain towards somebody. And it's challenging not to do that to certain people when they really do kind of disappoint you. I'm doing air quotes. Disappoint you in any sense. So I think just understanding that relationships are going to change and that's okay is really important for people to hear you say that. And to have grace towards other people, the same grace that you're asking from them is important. Now, if someone's a big jerk, like,
well, that would be different.
Of course, please leave. But no, typically people have good intentions. You hope.
Yes.
And it sounds like you had really good support and you only had to deal with the grief and the trauma and the loss. And, sometimes we need to go to counselors and therapy because of what happens to relationships outside of that loss. I particularly had to. So things just changed. And your whole life changed. Everything changed.
Everything changed. And some for the better. Some for the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these not having been through that. I mean, yes, we never actually had a service for Harrison because I just didn't know what to do. The thought of doing that so soon after that happened was terrifying to me. And I thought, I can't plan a funeral.
We didn't either.
I can't plan a funeral. I can't do it. And
did you have guilt over that at all?
A little bit, regret? But we did. We had our priest from our church, which really helped just at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. That's what we did too.
And we do a lot to honor Harrison and to remember him and to keep him not alive, but to keep his memory alive and to make his life, his short, life within my womb have purpose. Or not to make it, but to find, we were determined that he had a purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all have a purpose, whether we know what it is or not. And we were just kind of open to figuring out what that might be. You had asked about the having 2 children and having time to grieve, and one thing that I don't know where this came from either, but I knew that they needed to see me grieve. Like I knew that I didn't need to hide everything from them. And they were little. I mean, 5.5 and 2, not quite 3.
Do you know if they remember?
My daughter does. Wow. My son, she's the oldest. My son, he doesn't really remember, but Harrison has always been a part of our family and our family discussion, so it's not something that's hidden at all. So I don't think he doesn't have memories of coming to the hospital. He crawled up in first my daughter came in and she just bawled, like when we had to tell her. And this was before we even delivered Harrison. She came and just bawled.
And she remembers that moment? Or more so the days after?
I don't know. Yeah. But she definitely remembers
Yeah.
For years, she would hear things, and it would just make her so sad and upset. So it definitely affected, I think, the trajectory of her life in a way.
Mm.
And then my son was crawled up in my husband's lap, and he started singing rock of my daddy. He said, "Rock of my daddy," on the treetop, hugging my husband.
Oh my God.
And it was just like, so when you think about these beautiful moments, you're like, that was a beautiful moment that was wrapped up into a terrible one. So
walk me. Then you had a fourth.
yes.
How soon after?
So, you know, my thought was, I don't know that I can ever do this again.
Well, because you said that Harrison was kind of like, you weren't sure you want to do this again.
Well, initially, yes, like, but you know, you don't want to have a baby, and then you're pregnant, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
you know, it
absolutely,
changes.
yeah.
And but after he was born, yeah, I thought I don't know that I can ever go through this again. Like, this was just.
So you weren't like, I got to try this again. I got to go
No,
again. Wow.
No. And I said, my husband and I talked about it, and I said, I was like, I think we just need to get through the end of this year. Like this, so this was February 2013. I was like, I think we need to get through the end of this year, and then we can see.
Mm-hmm.
And December 31st, 2013, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Literally.
Almost made it.
Literally New Year's Eve.
Wow.
I found out I was pregnant with our fourth.
Okay.
So he was due September of 2014, but he was 6 weeks early, so he was July.
How was that pregnancy for you?
It was not nearly as terrifying as I thought it would be.
Okay.
Again, I think because we were just busy. Now, I did pay attention a lot more. You know, I was very aware. He also, like, sign from God, I started feeling him kick at 16 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
I was 22 weeks with my others. It was late, 16 weeks.
Were you further along than they thought?
No.
Oh, okay.
He was, 16 weeks, he still is really active. I honestly was like, this is God's way of telling me it's going to be okay. I got you. And in fact, closer, you know, in July, I was counting kicks, and my husband, we had dinner, and I was laying on the couch, and I don't remember what the number was, but you wanted him to kick 10 times in an hour following dinner or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at my husband and said, do you think we should be worried? He just kicked 150 times in 10 minutes.
Oh. Super active kiddo.
Super active. And he's still super active. Like, one of his preschool teachers was like, he is a lover of life, and he absolutely is. Like, he just is spirit, lots of spirit, but not in a hyperactive type of way. Just quick to laugh and joyful and always moving and ready to do things. And I literally was driving down the street one day and had this epiphany. I was like, he's 2 boys in 1. That's what this kid is. He is 2 in 1.
Wow. I wonder if any other, I haven't heard that yet from lost moms, because I don't know anybody who's the pregnancy after the baby after loss is grown enough to know them and have a personality, you know, and see that it's 2 in 1. That's such an interesting perception of that. Wow.
Yeah.
So you obviously are still grieving. Grief looks so different. Do you remember how it's changed over the last almost 10 years? Was it noticeable to you how it's shifted?
I think there's some noticeable moments, right? So some things that stand out over the past 10 years. I mean, the first weeks, months, you know, I remember one of my friends picking up my youngest to take him to preschool, and I was just sitting in a rocking chair, you know, just sort of having that moment to myself to, like, grieve and cry. And but yet still having to function, right? You put one to get out of bed in the morning and take a shower and put on a little makeup and put one foot in front of the other. And then I remember sort of those first moments in the months after where I really laughed about something. And I think you and I talked about this, like feeling guilty about it, about feeling so joyful about something. And it was my kids, like, it was raining and there was a muddy spot in the front yard, and they just went out and started running around in the rain and got muddy and wet and like exactly what you want to do when you're a child, right? And then it does get easier. You know, you don't ever forget it, but it just folds into to the fabric of your life a little bit. It doesn't necessarily define everything.
That's such an interesting statement. That is so important to say that. It doesn't define everything. It's part of you.
It's part of you, and it is not the sum total of you, right? We are the sum total of everything that has happened to us, and that is good and bad and ugly and sad and beautiful all at the same time. It's just part of who I am. And things, I think things are different. I think I have the ability to be more present now, but I'm not always. And I'll feel guilty about that. I'm like, I should know better than to not be able to enjoy the moment. Or if I would get frustrated with my other children, like feeling like, oh, I can't do this. I know what it's like, but I'm human. You know, I'm human and I'm an adult and they're kids and our brains work differently. And, you know, it is okay to not have it all together. Yeah. You know, it's okay not to have it all together. But the guilt, or not the grief changed a lot. But year 6 was tough. And I don't know why.
Year 6 was tough.
Year 6 was just a doozy of a year, and I don't have any explanation for that. Don't know why. Don't know what happened. I don't know that there was anything that triggered it, but it just was really hard.
So what did that year look like?
I cried a lot. Okay. Like it came up a lot, and I just got it all out. I mean, I have a whole box in my closet with cards and his baptism gown and his blanket that he was wrapped up in the hospital and his hat and a clip of his hair, the bracelets from the hospital. And I would just have to go in my closet every once in a while and close the door and take all that out and just bawl and get it out. And I don't really know why. I wish I had a reason. But I think that's the thing about grief is sometimes it just comes up when you need it to, or when you need to. Maybe I had stifled it a little bit in the year or so prior and just needed to let it ride out.
Saying grief comes up when you need it to is such an interesting statement, honestly. Right? I think because as years go on, and this is, why your perspective is so important to me, because you're almost a decade out and I'm 8 months,
Right.
Grief is ruling my life, and I'm doing everything I can to learn how to carry it and to keep it from taking over. Like it's an active mission every day to keep going, to find the happiness, to enjoy my life, enjoy the moments. But grief is creeping up and it's sitting there at the top all the time. And now I'm emotional. So for you to say 10 years out almost that it comes when you need it to, so you can feel again and you can mourn again and you can have those emotions and honor your baby again, is so interesting to me that it's going to shift, to that feeling, because it's exhausting right now to try to keep grief at bay. And I know most of my friends are just a year to 2 years out, and it's still super challenging, the holidays and things like that. So I don't know. I feel like almost relief when you say that, because that means that there's going to be a time where happiness and joy are prevalent, and grief will sometimes poke its head up, but you honor it. You don't push it away. You say, I need this moment and I need to honor this right now. And then you move through it, you process it, you grieve, and then you continue on, you know? And to me, that's a relief, because if it feels like this forever, and I hope anybody listening, like, it's not like this forever.
It's not like that forever.
It's a relief.
You know, and it does, the holidays for me aren't really hard anymore.
Okay.
We always talk about him. We always mention him. My kids say grace at the table and always include him.
Yeah.
So even though he's not here physically, he's part of our family and always will be. You know, and it's sort of the question. I remember one of the hardest things to answer when, you know, in the first few years was, how many children do you have?
Oof, yeah.
And my husband, you know, said, not everybody has to know your life story, so it's okay to say you have two. If you know them, you know, people who know you really well are going to give you three, but, you know, don't, you know, if you don't need to tell them, you know, because inevitably the next question is going to be, how old are they?
Right.
Right.
This has been like, and this has been almost like a really big conversation. And a lot of people get really prickly over this. Like, I will always own my kids and talk about them. And if people want to ask me questions, oh, buckle up, I'm going to tell you everything. And to me, I'm really interested to hear this, because it's like, sometimes you just can't get into it. You just can't get into it. You're not going to have enough time to honor the facts and the details. You're going to make something really uncomfortable. You may even burst into tears in the middle of something grief will be really inconvenient. So that's really interesting that your husband said that. And how did you feel in the moments where you didn't say you had 3 or 4?
At first, it was really hard. Again, guilt. I mean, guilt is sort of a prevalent theme here. But I realized he was right? Like, I don't have to tell everybody. I don't need to tell every stranger on the street. Like, I can't live in it all the time.
Interesting.
And again, back to, cannot define the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And not everybody it's just like you wouldn't tell a stranger on the street all your life secrets, right? Or all your passions, or just not, we don't have to know everybody that well. You can, but now, you know, I've gotten to a point where, and I do have, you know, I don't usually say I have 4 children to people now. I say 3, which, I mean, 3 here on earth.
And that's what works for you. That's what works for you.
Three here, and generally, again, because that question is coming up with somebody who I don't really know. So,
and sometimes it's sacred. You know, I don't have any living children, so for me, when someone asks me, I'm like, hell yeah, he's in heaven, and I love him so much, and I miss, and it's just word vomit. But that'll change. But
it might and it might not, and that's okay.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it's okay.
It's whatever you. It's whatever you feel good with.
But there are some times, to your point, he's so sacred to me, and what happened to him is so tragic. And it's like, do I want to expose this right now to this person I'm never going to see again? And I sometimes imagine him being a little kid tugging and saying, will you quit talking about me? You're embarrassing me, Mom, you know? Because that's how my kid would be. So again, it's up to us how we want to handle this. And so that's why I'm happy to hear you say the flip opinion that you don't have to talk about it 24/7. If he was living, people would be like, would you shut up about this kid? You know? So we feel pressure, and you said guilt. It's always looming. We feel this pressure because they're not here on earth to constantly bring them up, constantly talk about them, constantly, quote unquote, honor them by divulging this really horrific scene and details, and then try to take that and say, oh no, but he's beautiful and his life it was amazing and it really changed me for the best. And so having to overcompensate for that sad really quickly to this stranger, we're probably overthinking it, but like, it's okay if you don't want to divulge it all the time. And I even know women who like sometimes will go out and I'd be like, I have no kids. I'm like, you have 4 at home. What are you talking about? Nope, tonight I don't. I'm out. I'm drinking with my friends, and it's like, and it's not like you're denying your children. It's not like you're refusing to acknowledge that they exist. That's not what's going on here, because of course they exist. They're always with you. But it's okay sometimes if you feel what you need is what you need, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah. That's important for people to understand, that we carry this guilt around, and so we try to overcompensate for it forever. And that's exhausting on top of it all.
It is. Well, and I think, the exhaustion is another thing with grief, right? Like, you do come out of it because it gets exhausting. And so it does, I'm at a point where it does not rule my life, right? Grief is still there. Yeah. It's different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 9 years ago, but it's still there in different forms. And, but it doesn't consume my life, right? My daily life. It doesn't, in the same way that, nothing should really consume your life or daily thoughts, right? Like,
Truth.
I mean, what I would be saying for anybody who's really recently experienced this, is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. But don't expect that that doesn't mean that you're not honoring him anymore. It doesn't mean that you're not, that he's, like, Brody's never part of your life anymore. It just means he gets folded in, and
gets folded in. So Harrison's going to be 10
in February.
Have you? I know that in some of the ones that are approaching the first year, feel pressure, feel like they have to do something super big to honor and make sure everybody knows that they're turning 1. Do you feel pressure turning 10?
So I was just thinking about this today, actually, or this morning. We have done every year on his birthday a formula drive. It started as a formula drive for Genesis Shelter, which is now our house. It's a local shelter in Atlanta that provides housing and assistance and childcare, and they have a kindergarten for families experiencing homelessness who have newborns. And then we did that for a couple of years, and then we started donating to Atlanta Children's Shelter just because needs changed. And that evolved into sort of an infant needs drive that we've done every year. So formula, baby food, snacks, toys, clothes, whatever they needed. And then this past year, and it was all very fun, got very cumbersome because everything's delivered to me. And I was sorting and delivering, which I loved. But there's storage space issues. So this past year, we actually did a fundraiser and had people donate directly, did a campaign for Atlanta Children's Shelter, and people donated and raised money. I think we were just over $10,000 this past year for their infant and toddler rooms, so that they can buy what they need, have designated funds to buy what they need when they need it. So to answer your question, 10 years coming up, I don't know. I think there is a little bit of pressure to make it bigger. I think my husband and I plan on doing a pretty large donation. I mean, we're going to try to do something that we can, almost as a way of thanking all our friends for donating every year. Because every year we send out a Valentine's card. And we don't do Christmas cards, we do Valentine's cards. And every single year we're like, will you please give to our...
That's lovely. Valentine's cards instead of Christmas cards. Yeah. I like that.
But So,
Will you donate, please?
please donate. I'm like, oh gosh. They're like, golly, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Do any of your friends have sons or children turning 10 around that time?
Yes. Not my closest friend. Well, let me think about that. I do have friends with children who are. I had some neighbors, some friends who had children born around the same time, and they were fabulous. Like when this all happened, I mean, and I know that had to be hard for them because they were having these babies and having to, like I just know that was hard. And they still came over and were amazing.
Yeah.
And I can imagine myself being in that position, having a brand new baby and a friend losing one and not having any idea what to do. Like, how do I navigate this when I've just had a baby?
Wow, you are super empathetic to those who have not had a loss before. That's such a great attribute to have.
But they were really great. So I do see some pictures of, kids born around that time.
It stings, right? A little bit sometimes.
It used to. It doesn't anymore.
Okay.
It really doesn't. It's nice to see them.
Right.
It's nice to see how old they are. I do like to kind of imagine what he would be like.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, like, I've got this 8-year-old who I don't know if I would have this 8-year-old.
Yeah, I was about to,
right?
yeah, I was
Like,
thinking.
I don't know if he would be here if Harrison hadn't died. And he's actually, my 8-year-old's asked me that before. And the truth is, I'm like, I don't know.
Wow. I've heard that before. I've heard a lot of lost moms say the only beautiful thing is this next child who I would not have had. And it may not make sense to a lot of people when they hear us say that, but I think that in the efforts to see their presence in another child, it's in the one after. And I think you saying that before, 2 and 1, that's so funny. I will never forget that. That's pretty great. Well, unfortunately, we are approaching the hour, and what I love to do is leave you with last words of any message that you want to leave any lost mom or even me before we go.
You know what? I think one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself is to, and we all want to know answers to everything. And I think that that's good especially when it comes to trying to develop preventable measures. How do you keep this from happening? I think that's a wonderful thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think on a personal level, with your own personal experience, if you can get to a point where you're okay with not understanding why, and maybe that's not the medical reason, but like why did this happen? What was God's plan? But just in trusting, it's such a hard thing to do. But if you can allow yourself to trust where you are and where your life has taken you, then you sort of open yourself up to letting that grief unfold and to letting you continue to live your life. I don't know if that's
beautiful. No, that's
helpful or not.
No,
but I
you're
think
incredible.
For me, it was a big moment. And again, that came from my mom. Like, you don't have to understand why. To be comfortable with the unknown. Let yourself get really comfortable with the unknown.
Wow. I love that. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story and Harrison's story. I think your perspective is beautiful and so helpful.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for doing this. I think this is neat. This is a needed thing. I haven't talked this much about it in a very long time.
I love me a lost mom talking about her baby. It's the best. And it's tough, I know, but I can see such beauty coming from it as well. And Harrison's super proud of his mama, for sure. He's here and he's chilling with Brody, showing him the ropes up there.
I know. I picture him, being rocked by his grandmothers and my dog, we had a dog die a couple years ago, and like he's up there. They're all together.
It's such a comforting thought. Regardless of what you believe, you can't. No one hates that image. You know.
No, exactly. Like it doesn't matter what your personal faith belief. Like that image, there's a lot of comfort there.
Yeah, it works for us.
That's all for this episode of the At a Total Loss podcast. If you'd like to help other lost moms benefit from our stories, please share, rate, and comment wherever you are listening. Thank you for being the strong mama that you are. And remember, when things have you at a total loss, we're here to help you find the light in the darkness. Take care, lost moms.